ESPN on ABC. This is the Jiffy Lube Rivalry Series.
Welcome to college football presented by Kay Jewelers. You're watching the ACC on ESPN. It's the 112th meeting between Georgia and Georgia Tech. The 7th-ranked Bulldogs trying to keep their playoff hopes alive, while the Yellow Jackets need a win to get bowl eligible. Georgia Tech's lone loss 2 weeks ago against Auburn, that dropped them from the #1 spot to #7, and they'll play the winner of Auburn, Alabama in the SEC championship game next week. Chaos started yesterday with Miami losing. Will we have more today? And a lot of these games on our networks, ABC and ESPN. And hi, everybody. Alongside Greg McElroy, I'm Dave Pasch, Tom Lugan, Bill in a bit. Greg, Georgia has a true freshman quarterback in Jake Fromm. They've lost one game all year, but he's been helped out a lot by that great stable of running backs, one of the best in college football.
Yeah, just as a 1-2 punch. I don't know if you can find a better duo in the entire country between what Sony Michel and Nick Chubb do, and it's in large part due to the way they complement each other. Nick Chubb, more of the prototypical between the tackles type of runner, loves the power eye, loves to run downhill. And Sony Michel, with his versatility as a pass catcher and on the perimeter, they really pick up each other in areas of weaknesses. They're a fun duo to watch, and they're a big reason why Georgia controls its fate with the college football playoff.
The Governor's Cup trophy and so much more on the line today. Georgia has won the last 8 meetings in Atlanta. Get ready for some clean, old-fashioned hate.
He once saved.
Welcome back to historic Bobby Dodd Stadium in Atlanta. Georgia Tech at 5-5, 4-4 in the ACC, taking on 7th-ranked Georgia. And let's bring in the 3rd member of our crew, Tom Luganville.
Well, guys, Georgia head coach Kirby Smart, you know that he's a defensive guy, but he'll also admit he doesn't have all the answers to stopping Georgia Tech's triple option. But what he has admitted to is they cut block in practice. They prepare for what's coming from Georgia Tech's offense. On top of that, they just don't prepare for the triple option, guys, during the week of the Georgia Tech game. It's also during each and every week of the season. They set aside an option period to work various elements of this offense so they can prepare for it on an important weekend just like this before the SEC championship game.
And we're going to see Taquan Marshall, the Georgia Tech quarterback, and the Yellow Jacket offense momentarily. Georgia won the toss, elected to defer. Rivalry weekend in college football, and so much at stake on so many campuses. Can Georgia win today and then win at Mercedes-Benz Stadium just down the road next week to make the college football playoff? Can Georgia Tech get bowl eligible? The Yellow Jackets lost a game against UCF because of the hurricane. They have not been able to make it up. A spectacular day in Atlanta. Temperature in the mid-60s. This game has been sold out since August. And Georgia Tech standing in the way of a possible playoff spot for the Georgia Bulldogs. Blankenship will kick off to Jerry Howard. Howard had a little trouble with it, and he scoops up in the end zone, but he's got to get out of there. He did. They're going to mark him down at the 1-yard line. Christian Payne was down there for the Bulldogs. A horrific start for the Yellow Jackets.
I have never seen starting field position this poor. On an opening kickoff, anxiety, anticipation, rivalry weekend. You misplayed the opening kickoff, and now your quarterback's going to start with his toes in the end zone on the first snap of the game against one of the best defenses in the land.
we've got a whistle here. This may get reviewed further to see if it was a safety.
But the runner was down in the field of play. That play is under review.
Now here's the issue. The whole ball has to be outside the end zone for it not to be a safety. So that's the first thing. I thought he got out. I thought that forward progress, he was all the way out of the end zone. The other issue is you saw Jerry Howard put his hand up. Was he signaling for a fair catch, or was he just trying to shield the sun? But for an official, that's not supposed to matter. If you put your hand up like that in a waving motion, that's a fair catch signal.
It is. And you can see the shadow of the ball carrier. Clearly it's working from right to left, so that sun is directly in his eyes, but that looks like a fair catch signal.
Hey, Greg, I'm down here and I'm standing right on the near sideline left, right by Paul Johnson, looking directly up at the sun. That was clearly an attempt to shade the sun from his eyes. There's no question about it, but it could be mistaken, of course, for a fair catch signal.
Even if it's a penalty, it's really not going to matter that much. I mean, you're already halfway between the goal line and the one, so it moves it back just a hair. He clearly, though, was out of the end zone on contact from Christian Payne, so the forward progress was stopped there.
But it also, I mean, by rule, too, first possession of the football was in the end zone.
After review,
that's a good point.
The receiver gave an invalid fair catch signal. He possessed the ball in the end zone. By rule, when he possesses the ball, the play is dead. The play results in a touchback. First down for Georgia Tech.
That's a good point.
20-yard line.
The first time he touched the ball was in the end zone. So it works out where even he's not trying to signal for a fair catch.
It works out in their favor. Clearly, you can see he's just trying to shade, or it looks like he's trying to shade from the sun that's directly in his eye. But right there, he doesn't possess the ball until he's fully in the end zone. Of course, with the fair catch, as soon as he possesses it, the ball is dead. And right there, that's first possession. That's a good job by the officials and a huge break for Georgia Tech early in this game.
Are we in for something wild to happen today?
I think
I mean, when something like that happens,
every rivalry weekend's wild.
Well, you think you're going to start on the one and then a heartbeat later because of a mistake on a bad catch signal, you end up with a touchback. Taquan Marshall, excellent athlete in Hamilton, Georgia, ran track, obviously played football. Needs 13 yards to break the school record for rushing yards by a quarterback. He's got 1,074 in the season. That's number 2 in the ACC behind Lamar Jackson. 2nd and 6 on the Tech 29. Marshall pitching it. And Searcy wrapped up. Roquan Smith, the leading tackler for Georgia, a terrific linebacker. Butkus candidate, makes the play.
And Roquan Smith's a guy that we'll keep our eye on all day long. He's going to be following the football. If you were to rank the levels of importance on this defense, Roquan Smith would be number 1. Maybe not the most talented guy on the defense because there's a lot of elite players amongst that Georgia group. But Roquan Smith, from a production standpoint and understanding what the defensive coordinator Mel Tucker wants, has been outstanding this year.
3rd and 5. And Marshall keeping it, able to break a tackle and get the first down out to the 40-yard line.
Great job by Taquan Marshall right here. Little lead option with some pullers out in front. He sees that Georgia does a good job of cutting off that perimeter run lane. He goes north and south, understands how far he has to get, falls forward for a big first down.
Georgia Tech, number 4 in the country in rushing, number 2 in passing yards per completion. They don't throw it often, but when they do, it's down the field. Marshall with the pitch. Georgia's all over it. Lynch hogtied by Roquan Smith again.
I tell you, Greg, it's very clear that Georgia does not want this ball to get to the perimeter. They are leveraging the football to spill it to the outside, to force that ball to the sideline. That's why there was such success with Jaquan Marshall on that inside run, taking advantage of the over pursuit. I would expect Paul Johnson here to start going back to the inside run game.
Yeah, I think you're right, Tom. That fullback dive is paramount when trying to keep this defense honest.
So a loss of 1, second down and 11, and met at the point of attack is Cottrell, able to get a couple of yards. Jonathan Ledbetter and John Atkins up front for Georgia. It'll be 3rd and long.
And this is what you can't have if you're Georgia Tech. You cannot, under any circumstances, get tackled behind the sticks and lose yardage on your first down play, because then you're playing and operating at a very difficult point when you're off rhythm. Because right now, on 3rd and long, this is not going to be an area in which Georgia Tech's going to have a lot of success against a defense like this.
Marshall, a rare pass, and it is incomplete through the hands of Brad Stewart. So it's 4th down, and Georgia Tech will have to punt. Tech won in Athens last year by a point. They were down 2 scores in the 4th quarter. They won in Athens back in 2014, but they have not been able to beat Georgia here in Atlanta since 1999. Presley Harvin, a 240-pound punter. It's scooped up on the 11 by Hardman. He's got running room. Hardman past the 30-yard line. Great return for Mecole Hardman, one of the top returners in the SEC, 38 yards. Good starting field position for Jake Fromm in Georgia when we return. Jake Fromm, the Georgia quarterback, a true freshman from Warner Robins, Georgia. In high school, only Deshaun Watson had more passing yards in Georgia history. Originally committed to Alabama when Kirby Smart was there as the D coordinator. And in the 2011 Little League World Series, he had 3 home runs and struck out 8 batters while playing for the Warner Robins team. Became the 2nd Georgia quarterback to start as a true freshman on the road. Eric Zaire was the other back in '91. Fromm's debut was in South Bend, and he won the game. First down to the Georgia 39-yard line, and they're going to hand it off to Sony Michel. Michel over 800 yards on the season. Chubb is over 1,000, and that's a gain of about 6 on first down.
They are so good in the backfield with both Chubb and Michel. And don't forget the freshman, DeAndre Swift, who does so many different things for him. If you look at the top 3 or 4 running backs against Georgia, they're as good as anybody in college football.
They've never had 2 backs with 1,000 yards in the same season. Michel has a chance to get that. And on an end around, it's Hardman getting the first down. You see the Jets of Mecole Hardman again into Tech territory to the 49.
Greg, lots of substitution here. They've gone with a bunch of different packages the first couple of plays, and what a nightmare it is to have to defend Sony Michel, Nick Chubb, and Mecole Hardman all on the field at the same time.
Now it's just Michel in the backfield on first down at the Georgia Tech 49. Georgia bounced back from that loss against Auburn by thumping Kentucky a week ago. Michel again, and look at all that movement at the line of scrimmage down to the 41, an 8-yard pickup.
Sony Michel has done so many things over the course of his career. Early in his career, as a freshman, he was used a lot as a wide receiver and also kind of as a perimeter run back. Between the tackles rushing for Sony Michel has improved dramatically over the last 4 years, and I think most NFL scouts view him as an extremely intriguing prospect as he transitions to the next level.
They give it to Swift, and he has another Georgia first down. I think the other cool story, Greg, about Michel and Chubb is that they're best friends. They're competitors, but they're best friends. They room together. I think, too, both guys have dealt with some major injuries, and that has to bring you closer together when you're rehabbing together. Chubb had that awful knee injury a couple years ago. Michel has fractured his shoulder blade twice. Just think Todd Gurley was in the backfield with him at one point. Fromm with time, and it's way behind the intended receiver. Godwin incomplete. Corey Griffin of Georgia Tech looking around like, man, should have picked that off.
That one a little off the mark for Jake Fromm. I think he saw some Georgia Tech players in the throwing lane, and it was almost like a throwaway as he just guided it to no man's land in the middle of the field.
Tell you, Greg, he had time to hold on a half second more and lay it over the top. Let Godwin run to the sideline.
2nd and 10 from inside the Georgia Tech 40-yard line. Fromm will throw again, and it's Javon Wims on the catch. Well defended. Little shoving out of bounds by Lance Austin. And so it's a gain of about 4 or 5 for Wims, their leading receiver.
That's who Jake Fromm is. Underneath throws, controlling the situation. You miss on 1st down, make 3rd down manageable by picking up 5 or 6 on 2nd down. That's why they're one of the better 3rd down teams in the country, because Jake Fromm has a tremendous understanding of situational football for a young man who's playing his first collegiate season.
They get to Michelle, who breaks a tackle initially, another one, and it's a 1st down to the 25.
That's a ridiculous run. I mean, just a ridiculous run. I mean, look, this thing's perfectly covered. You see Mitchell in the back. He misses him. Then you see Michelle do a little shimmy, jump cut, and then go forward for the needed yardage. He's so elusive and more powerful than you would think.
Got feet like a scat back in the body of a bruiser.
He's a stud. Can do so many different things for you as an offense.
And missed tackles by Georgia Tech, a big problem in their loss last week. Big problem all season. Fromm with time, and it's almost intercepted. Corey Griffin again had a beat on it. Fromm a little off so far.
Really well played by Corey Griffin. This is a play that Georgia runs an awful lot of. It's called the double post. You have one guy inside trying to hold that interior defender. Griffin didn't stay with that guy down the middle. He recognized and saw the eyes of Fromm work outside. He drifted underneath it and almost got himself an interception in the red zone.
Fromm has thrown 15 or fewer pass attempts in 6 games this year, so it is a run-heavy offense. Here's Chubb on the cutback. Another broken tackle. And Chubb to the 20-yard line. And fans are cheering that are Georgia Tech fans when it's a 5-yard run, because they're just happy to get these guys to the ground.
Yeah, it takes a whole defensive unit to bring these running backs down. Seldom will they be brought down by first contact. Another example, though, where an incompletion on 1st down. Nice positive play to make this 3rd down more manageable. And you have your entire playbook available to you, whether you want to run it or throw it. You have both those options here on 3rd and 5.
They don't throw it a lot to their backs, though. Fromm steps up. His pass is caught. It's Hardman, and it's another Georgia 1st down. It's been about a 6-minute drive. Georgia moving downfield into the red zone.
Georgia's thinking, well, we're on offense. We might as well hold the ball, because we know if we give it back to Georgia Tech, they can be a ball control offense and eat some clock. So Georgia's got to be pretty methodical when you're playing against a triple option team. You got to understand situations. You got to watch the clock and count the snaps as well for your defense.
Play 11 of the drive. One-on-one coverage on the back shoulder throw. It's pulled in by Wims, and he's ruled out of bounds at the 1. He also dropped the ball when he went out of bounds, but they felt that he had secured it to the ground before he popped up and the ball came out.
See, he clearly has control of the ball. Good job. Good concentration by Wims. That's well covered on the perimeter. It really is.
That's a touchdown.
I stepped on him.
Should be a touchdown, right?
Just depends on where that ball was as it crossed the plane. I'm going to look at it, though.
But again, that plane extends. I mean,
Holding on the field. It's a catch, and the run was short of the goal line. That play is under review.
Javon Wims, a guy who had one scholarship offer out of high school, went to a small school called Belhaven University, then to junior college. He only played 1 year of football in high school. That's a touchdown, folks.
That should be a touchdown for sure. You're right. You can see clearly has possession of the ball. Both feet are down in bounds. And you see the extension over the pylon. More than likely, this call could potentially be overturned.
Watch the left foot. That's the only question, is the left foot. That's a touchdown.
It's pretty definitive, guys.
Looks like it to me.
Well, you said it earlier. I mean, he's been the go-to guy at receiver, and he's been reliable.
He's been, you don't want to say star because you don't want to throw that around, but it's imperative that he is successful in the passing game. Him and Terry Godwin, they've been very crucial to this offense. Maybe not headline players, but so important to the success and trying to create that balance offensively. Wims has been a very pleasant surprise this year for a lot of guys that didn't know what type of production he would have coming into the season.
After review, the ruling on the field stands. First and goal.
It's interesting because I thought that ball extended over the pylon. Of course, it has to be indisputable video evidence to overturn beyond all doubt. Clearly, the replay officials, these ACC crew, didn't feel as though it was enough. Shouldn't affect much, though, as first and goal from the with one of the best running offenses in the country on the field.
Just wonder if it was that left foot. They weren't sure if the left foot hit out of bounds before he extended all the way. And they got big Christian Payne in at fullback with Chubb behind him on first and goal. It's Chubb, and he's in. Touchdown, Georgia. Number 13 on the season for Nick Chubb.
It's a great drive by this Georgia Bulldog offense. Mix some pass, mix some rush, resulting in a touchdown. 12 plays, 5.5 minutes, and 61 yards for pay dirt.
And they mixed it up too. 5 passing plays, 6 running plays. It's 7-0 Bulldogs here in Atlanta. And a penalty marker thrown late.
They're loving the start here in Atlanta. The Bulldogs, early lead here in Atlanta.
Try.
Blankenship has made 64 consecutive extra points. This one will be about a 30-yard attempt, which is close to where NFL teams now have all their extra points. Blankenship, a sophomore, awarded a scholarship before the Notre Dame game. Kicked the game winner to beat the Irish. 30-yarder, same distance. And he's able to make that one 7-0. Georgia, 5:51 to go in the first.
Neil Lane designs for Hollywood's biggest stars, and at Kay, he designs for the
College football on ABC is presented by Kay Jewelers. Kay Jewelers, every kiss begins with K. And in part by Chevy. Chevy has earned J.D. Power Dependability Awards for cars, trucks, and SUVs.
20 young men honored today on Senior Day, including Matthew Jordan, who is a junior, who's a backup quarterback, but he's not going to play football anymore after the season, so he went out with the other seniors today. Tech has won 2 of the last 3 meetings. The last senior class to defeat Georgia 3 times in 4 years. You got to go back to 98 to 2001. Tech has not lost at home this year. They have not lost, or not won away from Bobby Dodd Stadium this season. 1-point losses to Tennessee and Miami. 4 of their losses, they're up by 2 or more scores in the game. Paul Johnson told us on the phone yesterday that a disappointing season. They can still make a bowl game. Omari Jarrett, a different return man this time. And it's a touchback. Georgia Tech will start on the 25 when we come back. Welcome back to college football, presented by K Jewelers as part of the Jiffy Lube rivalry series. Georgia in front 7-0 over Georgia Tech. These two schools separated by just 70 miles. Athens and Sanford Stadium east of Bobby Dodd Stadium here in downtown Atlanta. Georgia's had a lot of success here. Hasn't lost a game in 2 decades in Atlanta. 112th meeting of this series. Normally close games. Georgia did not count in the series a couple wins by Georgia Tech because they happened during World War II, where Georgia stopped playing and Georgia Tech was using some substitute players to play, and they won the series. Gervonta Benson stood up only 1 yard. Let's check in with Cassidy Hubbard in the studio.
Thanks, Dave. AT&T Field Pass, Louisville and Kentucky. And watch Lamar Jackson, currently 3rd in ESPN's Heisman Watch, on the run here. Goes out of bounds, gets in a shoving match, which then leads to a takedown with Jordan Jones. The refs called 4 offsetting unsportsmanlike conduct penalties, including Jackson, no ejections. It would then later score. It's 14-0 Cardinals over in the SEC network. Dave, Greg, Tom, back to you.
Oh, we're going to get a lot of that today, and rivalry games had some of it yesterday. Meanwhile, Trenton Thompson, who has missed 4 games with a knee injury this year for Georgia, he's down on the field.
He's in some pain. One of the better defensive linemen in the SEC. You hate to see him down. So important to what they're doing up front in the trenches.
And they're working on that knee. And again, cost him 4 games this year. Kirby Smart, the head coach, coming out.
Welcome back to Atlanta. A second ago, Trenton Thompson, number 78, right here, taking on that double team. You see he just goes down a little awkwardly. You see him getting stretched out, kind of in the splits. And he walked off the field a second ago under his own power, but pretty gingerly and very, very methodically. He's in the tent right now. We'll see if he's able to return.
And Georgia Tech with a 2nd down and long. Marshall with the pitch to Lynch, who gets outside and gets the first down to the 36-yard line. Lorenzo Carter tracks him down for Georgia.
This is what Georgia Tech's got to try to do. They have to try to get 2 players covering 1 guy. Right there, you see Lorenzo Carter, number 7, and Roquan Smith both take the quarterback, allows for the opportunity on the perimeter, and a little bit of a seam, which they were able to exploit for a decent run.
First man through. It's Benson, not much.
You know, guys, when you take a look at most offensive play sheets, here's an example of one that you might see that's going to be broken down into down and distance, hash mark, area of the field, specialty plays. You see coordinators often have this, and they're working it over depending on where they are on the field. Pay close attention to Paul Johnson. He's got no papers in his hands. He's going to use players to shuffle in and out to get the play in, and he does it based off of feel and alignment.
In other words, there's no play sheet as Marshall is tracked down. A late flag comes in. Lorenzo Carter on the tackle after a short game.
He's been doing this offense for 30 years. No play sheet necessary for Paul Johnson. You can see he's getting ready to call another play here in just a minute once he identifies what the penalty is going to be.
There is no foul for chop block. 3rd down.
That's another thing, too, guys, that we'll get into is the blocking elements. But see Paul Johnson there. He's just got a feel. Now, right now, this ball is close to the right hash, so that's going to give him some formational insights. And then based off of what he studied during the week, he knows that in this area of the field, this hash mark, the more than likely the personnel and what defense Georgia will be in gives him his call.
Marshall with time, now throws underneath and ruled a catch. First down by Lynch.
Good catch by Lynch. If he was able to grab it, that ball off the mark a little bit for Taquan Marshall, forcing his receiver to lay out.
Now they just changed the ruling on the field, said incomplete.
Incomplete pass. The play is under review.
But it's interesting, that official who you see there, he called it complete, but you can clearly see, and maybe Lynch had his back turned to that official a little bit when he rolled over. He never had possession. I mean, the ball can hit the ground if you maintain control of it. And they're going to look at it a little bit further here, but the ruling in the field is incomplete. Now, Greg and Tom, you guys have played quarterback for a long time. When is the last time you were in an offense where the quarterback or the head coach sent in the plays with players?
Middle school?
Yeah, middle school.
Yeah, honestly, because even in high school, we ran the spread and you'd signal in. We never had to run guys in and out.
The ruling of an incomplete pass is confirmed.
Yeah, and obviously that ball clearly moved upon impact with the ground. But I haven't seen it in a long time, Tom, but that's the way they've always done it, and they've had success doing it. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right?
Right, and I think the communication of getting that face-to-face interaction between the player coming in, getting the right personnel on, talking to the quarterback, it's just their mode of operation that they're most comfortable with. They're not hurry up, so they don't have to worry about any of that type of tempo.
Hartman's first punt was 48 yards, but it was a great return by Hardman. Hardman backing up, fields it on his 10-yard line, darts straight ahead, and knocked out of bounds around the 26.
Hardman returns the punt.
Rivalry weekend, and we've got two teams looking to avoid upsets and stay in the college playoff top four. Number 4, Oklahoma, West Virginia, 3:45 on ESPN, followed by Clemson, South Carolina, 7:30 on ESPN. And we were kind of spitballing yesterday talking about who could get upset, who definitely won't get knocked off. You think Clemson at South Carolina, that could be the game?
I think this game is going to be very tricky for Clemson. South Carolina, they're not as deep as Clemson, but their frontline starters are outstanding. And you take into account how difficult it is to play in Williams-Brice Stadium. That's a factor, too, that cannot be overlooked.
From the Georgia 27-yard line, Michelle getting outside to the 35-yard line before he's knocked out. And it looks like it's a Georgia first down. Well, with Clemson, it's going to be interesting with Miami losing. And what if Clemson were to go down? What happens to the ACC champ next week? Are you automatically in if you win the ACC? If you're Miami, you got one loss. If you're Clemson, you'd have two. Again, we are completely living in the speculative here, but this is fun.
We all live in the speculative these weeks, right? With all the unforeseen circumstances of the season so far.
Michelle running right, and he's dragged down after a gain of 1. I mean, what you've said all along, two teams from the same conference shouldn't go. But if something like that happens where you have a 2-loss ACC champ, a 2-loss Big Ten champ, does that mean the SEC, if Georgia doesn't lose again, Georgia wins the SEC, that 2 SEC teams go?
It just depends. Can you make a justifiable argument on behalf of a conference champion? That's the big thing. If you can't make a justifiable argument, then it's fine having two teams from the same league. But if you can stack the resumes and they're close, and I'd like to see them stay away from it.
Chubb, and there's just way too much movement up front. Georgia's offensive line so much better than it was last year, and they're just dominating at the point of attack. Chubb is going to come up just a hair shy of a first down. It's 3rd and 1.
Well, keep in mind, Greg, Dave, Georgia Tech in their front right now, they don't have a single 300-pounder along their starting unit, and only one of them in their 2 deep. So they are outmanned in terms of strength and girth at the point of attack.
You're saying that's bad in a short yardage situation?
I think you might be at a disadvantage.
Yeah, they have to rely on movement, and it hasn't been very successful to this point.
Chubb! Great play as Griffin. They try to run outside. Chubb bounced it wide. And Corey Griffin with too much speed. It's 4th down.
Mentioning the movement, look at the movement on the right-hand side. You see number 20, Austin, knifing inside. Several guys crossing face of those Georgia offensive linemen and tight ends. Then it leaves some free hitters out on the perimeter. Chubb has to bounce it, and he's brought down behind the line of scrimmage. Great play by the Georgia Tech defense.
Cameron Nizelek, a grad transfer from Columbia. You don't hear that in college football every weekend. He's an excellent punter, too. He hammers this one back to the 6-yard line to Stewart, and Stewart gobbled up at the 10. 49-yard punt, short return. Well, earlier this week, the Georgia Dome went down, imploding. As so many great events have taken place there, NFL, college football. But guess what? Mercedes-Benz Stadium is spectacular. And on Sunday, December 3rd, the College Football Playoff Selection Show on noon Eastern. We'll know the 4 teams that are in the College Football Playoff, and then eventually the 2 teams that will meet there for the National Championship game.
We got a fun couple weeks in college football upon us. Getting it started here on Rivalry Saturday.
Marshall. Late pitch, and Searcy dumped by Roquan Smith. It's so hard to get outside Smith, the leading tackler, for the 2nd straight year for Georgia. To the right there, you see the top 6. Auburn with 2 losses. Obviously, they need to win today against Alabama, win next week. Tom was saying to me, he thinks if Auburn wins the next 2, they should be number 1 in the country, even with 2 losses.
Wow. I don't know about that, but
I don't know. You beat 2 number 1 ranked teams in one season.
That's true.
If you beat Georgia twice and Alabama in a month, I think that's pretty good. Pass on the money to Ricky June, their best receiver, and they can't bring him down. Carries a convoy with him to the 36-yard line. 27-yard pass play. That'll get the crowd into it here. Jackets are on the move, but they trail 7-0 to Georgia. Back after this message and a word from our ABC stations. Greg, who's putting in work? Brought to you by Carhartt.
It's Roquan Smith. You've heard a quarterback spy, right? Everybody has. Follow the quarterback. How about follow the running back? That's exactly what Roquan Smith has done to this point of the game. Look how far off the ball he is. He's 7 yards removed from the line of scrimmage, which gives him enough room to be able to get through without getting touched to the point of attack. He's been all over the field early in this ball game. It's really not all that dissimilar from what he's done all season. By far the most productive Georgia linebacker we've seen in some time, and he is well on his way to becoming an All-American.
Just follow him, because he'll be where the ball is.
You can see him right now.
Look at this alignment, guys.
He's lined up kind of like a tailback on defense, so they try to hide him there. Searcy reversing field. And they finally get him to the ground to the 40-yard line, so it's only a 3-yard run. Lorenzo Carter on the tackle. Georgia Tech has not scored in more than 3 quarters going back to the first quarter of the Duke game. They're at 5-5, so they need a win to get bowl eligible. They're averaging just a yard per play so far in this game.
One thing that this offense really hasn't had is consistency on the downfield passing attack. That's an area in which Taquan Marshall, as he goes into the offseason, is really going to have to advance with his consistency.
Yard per play on first down, I should say, so far in this ball game. They got 3 on that first down. Marshall trying to find a hole. Hit by Roquan Smith again. Out to the 44. Just to finish up on Roquan Smith, we were talking about before. According to Pro Football Focus, which does a terrific job both college and pro, they said that against the run, he has not missed a tackle all year. Now, he did miss a tackle that led to a touchdown in the Auburn game, but that was on a pass. The bottom line is the guy just doesn't make mistakes.
When you can count and you remember the 1 missed tackle you've had this season, that's pretty dang good.
Yep.
Roquan Smith is effective as anybody when it comes to bringing down opposing players.
Wide pitch to Cottrell. Smith able to track him down, and it'll be close to the first down. It appeared that Cottrell got enough to move the chains.
That was a race to the first down marker. And now this pitch is so difficult to defend. You see Roquan Smith starting to move in that direction, recognizing the play. And Cottrell in a track meet against a couple of would-be tacklers. He got it, but not by much. Against most teams, that's probably a big play, not against a defense with this type of team speed.
Smith on the sideline right now. Georgia Tech from its 48-yard line. Option to the left. And Marshall's pitch to Searcy. And he's dumped. Malcolm Parrish coming up in run support. He missed time earlier this season with a foot injury. Might be their best corner.
He's a good football player. A good job right there, getting physical in the run game, avoiding a blocker, not getting moved too, even as the blocker came to him with a full head of steam, and then wrapping him up right there at the line of scrimmage. You don't often see corners that are willing to invite contact like that. Right there, he was up to the task.
Look at again how the linebackers are set up. Those two guys in the middle of the field over the ball on 2nd and 10. Marshall pitching it. And Lynch able to keep his feet in bounds. He paid for it, though. He got hit hard by Reed, but did a great job to tiptoe the sideline. It'll be 3rd and 1.
You might want to take a look at this. You can see as he's trying to tightrope that sideline, it's awfully close. You can see right there that left foot does in fact land on the white. A couple yards before where they marked it. They might want to take another look at this.
Every play is reviewed in college football, so you know they're looking at it upstairs, which means they're probably going to stop it. And here it is.
Ruling on the field, the runner stayed in bounds but was tackled short of the line of game. That play is under review.
Greg, this needs to go away, though. It just takes way too long when you're replaying every single play. I know you're looking to get it right, and they'll get it right, but and more 4-hour college football games. Allstate is proud to be part of the team that comes together to do good by contributing to participating universities' general scholarship funds for each field goal and extra point kick. To date, Allstate has contributed millions in scholarship funds. So they got it right upstairs, the replay booth, showing that the runner went out of bounds at the 46-yard line. You see Lynch stepping out with the left foot. So it's 3rd and 4 instead of 3rd and 1.
Pretty big difference when you have an offensive attack like this. So I'm glad they got it right. Clearly, the officials didn't see that left foot on the white line. But here on 3rd and 4 and change, difficult spot to be in when your quarterback hasn't been overwhelmingly accurate throwing it.
Excellent blocking downfield as Benson gets the 1st down. We talk about the cut blocks. It's not just in the box. It's out on the perimeter with receivers diving at the feet of corners. And it's a 1st down for Georgia Tech to the 40-yard line.
And they do such a good job of attacking your leverage. I mean, you see, 31, Cottrell, he's not really trying to cut that much. It looks like he's trying to go down.
But it's enough to do the job.
But it's enough to get in the way and not allow the tackler to potentially get hands on the ball carrier.
And you know that the defender is thinking about that. Big hole for Benson straight ahead down to the 33.
I think that's the point, Dave, is they get so caught up in their head with trying to protect their lower half, and they can't lay football on the ground, so they're being coached, you got to stay up, you got to stay up. Next thing you know, the ball's past you.
Yeah, and it's really puts so much stress on your defense when it comes to recognition, too. They can work it to the field, they can work it to the boundary, they can work it up the middle, they can throw it over your head. It's so difficult to handle and recognize on a down-by-down basis.
2nd and 3. Benson, the first man through, and he gets popped. Natrez Patrick met him behind the line of scrimmage as we go to Cassidy.
Dave, Jersey Mike's a performance above the game. Ohio State, Michigan, Buckeyes down 7-0. Play action. John O'Corn to Sean McKeon makes it 14-0 Wolverines in the 2nd quarter. Dave, Greg, Tom, back to you.
Man, that makes it really interesting for the Big Ten because Ohio State is in the Big Ten championship game. What if they win that and they lose this and you get 3 losses?
I'm telling you, it would be quite crazy. Then do the Trojans, if USC get back in, if they win out, it's Notre Dame's back in it potentially. Could get very interesting.
On a jet sweep, Lynch trying to get the speed. Just can't do that against Georgia. It's really hard with their linebackers. That's the 240-pounder, DeAndre Walker, tracking down the back at the 35-yard line. That's 4th down. Be about a 52-yard field goal try, but it looks like Paul Johnson sending in an offensive play.
Yeah, Paul Johnson, I don't think it was ever in doubt. This was 4-down territory, knowing the part of the field that they're in. But it's a lot tougher 4th down when your 3rd down gains nothing. Let's see who they try to target and which part of the field they try to attack here in a critical 4th and 4.
One pass so far from Marshall, only 108 on the season. 4th and 4. Marshall will throw here. Almost intercepted. Georgia will take over on downs anyway. Dominic Sanders nearly picked it off, and that would have been number 16, making him number 1 all-time in Georgia history. So they elect to go for it on 4th down, and Marshall's pass nearly ends up in the hands of Sanders. Either way, it's Georgia ball.
College football on ABC, presented by K Jewelers, is brought to you by Pacific Life. Experience the power of Pacific. Jiffy Lube, proudly pouring Pennzoil Synthetics. And Pizza Hut. Sign up for Hut Rewards today to earn points towards free pizza.
112 games between Georgia and Georgia Tech. The most played rivalry in college football comes up next on ABC. Wisconsin-Minnesota, 128th meeting. Paul Bunyan's axe will be at stake. Here's the Governor's Trophy, and of course bragging rights for the next 12 months. Georgia up 7-0. First down on the 34-yard line. Big hole, Michelle. Keeps his balance. Wow. We showed you the power earlier. Here he shows some dexterity just to keep his feet moving while his upper body is towards the ground.
This is the same play they opened the game with. Just a little crisscross in the backfield between Swift and Michelle. And it throws those linebackers off for Georgia Tech, resulting in a big gain.
17 yards. They go back to Michelle. Wrapped up at the 43-yard line by a Johnny Kerr.
Just the little things that Sony Michel does, like the end of the run right there. He's about to be tackled. He understands that. His balance is a little bit off. He decides to jump cut to his right for another 1.5 yard gain. It's the little things that Sony Michel has always done. He's so crafty with the ball in his hands. Man, he's fun to watch. So explosive as a ball carrier.
Jim Chaney, the offensive coordinator, has done such a good job of balancing the carries. Here's Chubb getting the call, and he gets a first down. I mean, Chubb's had some games where he's only carried it 12 to 15 times. Same with Michelle. These are guys that have had a lot of carries over the course of their careers at Georgia. Plus injuries have obviously played a major role for both of them.
Yeah, they might not get a ton of carries. You referenced Michelle. I mean, he had 6 carries against Florida for 140 yards. So, I mean, it's not counting the carries, it's making the carries count, correct? And it's exactly what these two running backs have done over the course of their careers.
On the 36-yard line, here's the quarterback keeping it. Nobody thought Fromm would hang on to the ball there, and he has a huge running lane to the sideline for 14 yards. Mark him out at the 21.
They kind of rock you to sleep with their handoffs. Of course, you can see flying inside. Victor Alexander takes the running back, and there he is. Jake Fromm just pulling it. Little zone read. And he sees some green grass on the outside. He's not the most electric runner, but he's serviceable enough to pick up needed yardage, and they have to have it in the zone read game.
Off play action from looking middle. Wide open touchdown, Javon Wims. They can't take that one away.
Run, 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 play action as you approach the red zone. They go with a triple post instead of a double post this time. Wims is left one-on-one against Lawrence Austin in the slot, and he reels it in for a touchdown.
Had the one in the first quarter where he tried to extend over the plane of the end zone. It looked like he did. They ruled that he didn't. This one will count. That's his 6th touchdown catch, Fromm's 18th touchdown pass.
The Georgia Bulldogs are known for their ground and pound attack, but don't forget about their true freshman phenom, Jake Fromm. So Wims, 14-zip Dogs.
Welcome back to College Football, presented by K Jewelers as part of the Jiffy Lube Rivalry Series. 14-0. Georgia in front of Georgia Tech after a Jake Fromm touchdown pass. If the Dogs win today and then beat either Alabama or Auburn next week, The SEC title game, they'll be in the college football playoff. Now let's look at today's All-State all-hands-in play.
That running game of Georgia is so difficult to defend that you have to put all your eggs in that basket. Look at the linebackers, and their eyes are in the backfield. Then, as soon as play action happens, one-on-one in the backfield because of the reaction from the linebackers. That's just an easy pitch and catch. An outstanding play call by Jim Chaney, setting it up with run, 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 run. And then on the 5th play of the drive, Jake Fromm drops back, finds Wims one-on-one against a 5'9" nickel defender. And it's an easy touchdown for the Georgia Bulldogs. They've done that time and time again this year, and they continue to be effective with their play-action passing game.
You know, Greg, the only team that's been able to get them out of that comfort zone has been Auburn, because they were able to overwhelm Georgia at the point of attack. They were able to match up on the perimeter one-on-one. And this isn't a type of defense with Georgia Tech that's got that type of personnel. So that recipe for success for Georgia continues.
Tyler Vernon injured for Georgia Tech. Well, again, that offensive line for Georgia, so powerful. You saw also the protection for Fromm on the touchdown.
So improved up front. And just with the misdirection and the power and the holes they're able to generate, you have to be really good in the trenches, really good and disruptive along the defensive line, and you have to be outstanding in the secondary, because Georgia's going to force you into one-on-one situations. You have to be able to win those one-on-one situations defensively. Georgia Tech unable to do so on that last drive.
And you get the feeling this is a drive that has to end in points for Georgia Tech, and they're starting on their 25-yard line. And that pass off the mark, intended for Grad Stewart, who was open. Marshall just couldn't connect with him. 2nd down.
And when you watch Marshall, when he misses, it's usually the ball is going to tail just ever so slightly to the right. You see, trying to lay out, the ball is about 2 yards off target to the right. As a right-handed passer, think about the way the ball spins. It's going to move that way. He's got to learn to make that adjustment, and will, as he continues to evaluate the way he throws it and releases the ball with conviction.
Rolling out to throw on 2nd down, going for June, and that pass thrown out of bounds. Ricky June had a big play earlier. He's their best receiver. Georgia Tech always has one. They always have one stud at receiver, but you got to get it somewhere where he can catch it.
Little surprised Georgia Tech decided to come out and throw on back-to-back downs there, Greg. Now they're really out of their comfort zone.
No doubt. They had a guy open on the first play, just weren't able to deliver the ball accurately. And that's been the issue for this Georgia Tech offense. In years past, they've been capable of hitting you through the air. This year's edition of Georgia Tech offense, not quite as good and not quite as balanced.
Bulldog fans making themselves known. They're up on their feet right now. Marshall gets out of there, and he's able to break a tackle and get a 1st down, and then maybe a late hit. Sanders knocked him out of bounds, but he was able to hold up in time. 17-yard run for Taquan Marshall.
That's a great job by Taquan Marshall. Nothing there as he moves to his right. He gets back to the left, and he's had success doing this. When he's dropping back and you see the defenders running out underneath some of the passing lanes, he's been able to take off and pick up some big yardage like there.
Which I think
on a 3rd and long. I thought the hit was a little late.
Yeah, I did too.
I thought he was clearly getting ready to head out of bounds. He was about a half yard out of bounds when Sanders delivered the blow.
I'm surprised Georgia Tech's sideline didn't get a little bit more amped up. Usually you can influence officials when you go crazy on something like that, and they didn't react.
That's a good point, Dave.
I'm due one every now and then. Here's Marshall with a pitch, and Searcy knocked down at the 44-yard line. Aaron Davis wrapping him up low, and the Natrez Patrick hitting him high. Davis is a former walk-on, and he's a candidate for the Burlsworth Trophy, which goes to a former walk-on.
He is a candidate, but I think that Baker Mayfield might have that one wrapped up alongside some other awards and some other hardware in the weeks to come. But he's been good for him. He really has. A guy that isn't talked about enough and probably a little underappreciated in this defensive group.
On 2nd and 7, Marshall. grab at the line of scrimmage by DeAndre Walker, but he was able to get a couple yards, so you got a huge third down here. Georgia went for it on 4th down on last possession when they were at the 35-yard line. Georgia Tech did of Georgia. We'll see if Yellow Jackets are thinking 4-down territory here, even though there's 5 minutes to go in the first half. I don't know if they can stop Georgia's offense.
Yeah, I think that this is not 4-down territory since you're on your side of the 50. The last time they had 4th and short, they opted to throw it. Expect them to try to keep it on the ground here.
First things first, 3rd and 5. Marshall. Pitch to Cottrell, and he's able to get the first down, keep his feet in play, and they finally track him down to the 20-yard line. 32-yard run by the sophomore from Knoxville, Tennessee.
The first time this Georgia Tech offense has had success getting on the perimeter to the right-hand side. Cottrell out in space, tight roping that sideline. Keep an eye, making sure he stayed in bounds right there. It was close, but I think he did. He gives the Georgia Tech offense new life in the red zone.
But they're going to stop it and look at it. And you hear boos from the crowd.
Player stayed in bounds for 1st down. Plays under review.
And again, I know that this is part of the game where every play is reviewed and we want to get it right. I just like the NFL rule, and they have this in part in college where you get to challenge plays if you're a head coach, and it costs you. If you're wrong, you lose a timeout. Same in college. I just think at some point we need to go more towards that. I mean, scoring plays and turnovers, those should be automatically reviewed, but just a play like this where it's a judgment call on the sideline, you're not quite sure. Yeah, you want to be 100%, but if you're not, do we really need to spend a minute and a half looking at it?
I wish the collegiate level would adapt to the NFL model. Challenge flags on the sideline. If you get both challenges correct, you get a 3rd opportunity. If you miss one, then you lose a timeout. I wish that that's exactly what college would do too, because as an offensive team right now, Georgia Tech's sitting here. They just had a big play. They have all this momentum, and then you have to stop down. And all of a sudden, Georgia's over there getting rested, talking about how they want to attack this offense. You lose all momentum. I understand why you want to get it right, but sometimes it really derails the offense more often than not.
Ruling on the field stands.
I just think it's not great for the game. It's not great for fans. And we're looking at all these avenues to shorten the game. They adjusted halftime a little bit. You know, you could talk about whether you stop the clock on after 1st downs. Maybe you had a 2-minute warning like you have. I know we don't want to completely uniform to the NFL because college football is so unique, but there has to be a way to take a game that sometimes is 3:40, 3:45, even 4 hours, and get it to around 3:15. On 1st down, they run Kervonte Benson, who's a 1,000-yard rusher this season, a sophomore from Marietta, Georgia. He came in with 0 career attempts, and he's been a workhorse this year. The last time Georgia Tech has been scoreless in 4 consecutive quarters, you're going to go back to 2008. And Paul Johnson's been here 10 years. Even though it's an offense that's different, doesn't mean it's not productive.
Right. No, they have been productive. It's different. But they are definitely right now struggling over the last 4 quarters, being successful and consistent. Huge opportunity for him here in the red zone.
Option to the right. Marshall pitching it. Inside the 15 is J.J. Green, the former Georgia Bulldog, who transferred to Georgia Tech to finish out his career.
You can see Georgia's defense, one of the best in college football against the run. Now, most running attacks aren't created equally. This one certainly unique. So don't get too enamored with the stat book when it comes to the clean, old-fashioned hate game, that's for sure. Rushing yards usually picked up in bunches.
On 3rd and 1, Marshall keeps it. And looks like he's got it to the 9. Roquan Smith on the stop, but it will be 1st and goal for Georgia Tech. All of their timeouts remaining. 2.5 or so on the clock, so they can take their time here. Take as much off the clock as they can so Georgia doesn't have time to operate with when they get it back.
Greg, the difference between this drive and the previous drives for Georgia Tech is they haven't had negative plays on early downs. Gotten them in 3rd and short and convert for another fresh set of downs right here.
Cottrell dragged down at the 6-yard line by J.R. Reed, whose dad Jake, longtime NFL tight end. Wide receiver. Uncle is Dale Carter, great DB.
You look at Georgia Tech too. I know it's only 2nd down, but you have to be thinking more than likely it's going to be 4-down territory. To try to pick up 3 here and then maybe 2 on the next and then potentially go for it on 4th. That's got to be their line of thinking, because field goals is not going to get them back into this game.
Marshall in trouble in the backfield. Well, that certainly hurts now what you're thinking with regard to whether to kick if you get in 4th down, because you're 3rd and goal on the 10. So what do they run here?
Just surprised to see them go with some misdirection right there. They've had some success on this drive, just running some of their base principles. Right there, they go away from it. They lose on the backside, and it results in a 4-yard loss. Tom mentioned it. You can't have lost yardage plays when you run an offense like this. You're just not built to dig yourself out of a hole when you're out of rhythm offensively.
You know, Greg, when you see... Go ahead, Dad, sorry.
I was going to say, we got to step aside for a break here as Georgia Tech takes it down and then takes a timeout. 54 seconds on the game clock. Stay tuned for the Capital One halftime report. Scores and previews of rivalry weekend. At last check, Ohio State was down 14-0 to Michigan. That obviously impacts the playoff race, although we're told now the Buckeyes scored, so it's 14-7. You got Wisconsin playing Minnesota, ABC 2:30 local, 3:30 Eastern. And you also have South Carolina Clemson tonight on ESPN. All those games impacting.
Are you predicting chaos? Are you predicting chaos today?
No, I'm not. Actually.
You're not? You're going to say chalk? No. You are so boring.
Not chalk, dude. Miami was.
That's true. Miami was yesterday, though. You got to look forward. Don't look back, Dave.
I do think Auburn's going to beat Alabama. Is that considered chaos?
Yeah, I think that's somewhat chaotic.
Timeout. Georgia Tech. Second charge timeout. This timeout will be 30 seconds.
I guess they wanted to see how Georgia was going to line defensively before they went ahead and called a play, so they ran another timeout. So I don't know if Auburn beating Alabama is chaos. I mean, Auburn's a top 6 team, and they already beat Georgia. But we saw Alabama a couple weeks ago.
Right.
They've got some injuries. I know they get some guys back on defense. But the way Auburn's going right now, I mean, if Alabama gets that, then obviously they're the clear favorite to win the championship. They might be anyway right now.
Yeah, I think Auburn, it's obviously a difficult environment to go into. Jordan-Hare is worth 7 points alone just by showing up because of just how difficult that place is. But I look at Alabama and the health of their linebacker position. It's obviously been talked about. The narrative has been, well, they've lost 4 of their top 7 linebackers. It's true, but Alabama is getting healthier. Mack Wilson, more than likely, is going to be able to go today. He's the signal caller on defense, a huge addition if, in fact, he's able to go. He was lost with a foot injury against LSU. Their offensive line, can they block Auburn's defensive line? These Georgia fans know it. That defensive line for Auburn, they're elite.
Trenton Thompson is back on the field for Georgia. 3rd and goal for Georgia Tech. Marshall to the air. Got a receiver wide open. Touchdown, Ricky June. The one guy, if you're Georgia, you can't leave open. Six touchdown catches on the year for June. 12-play, 75-yard drive. 14-7 Georgia.
What a huge play for Georgia Tech. Trying to find some room on the perimeter. They send Ricky June. You're going to see a little collision in the secondary. Clearly not on the same page as Marshall went back to pass. They didn't pass it off correctly because of the action of the 2 wide receivers who crisscrossed there at the top of the end zone. Uncovered leads to touchdown, and there is life on Techwood Drive. Quan Marshall to his #1 target, Ricky June, to cut this lead in half.
Well, we said with Georgia Tech, they always got one. They always got a dude at receiver, and you know you got to cover him down there. He's big and strong. I just love how Georgia Tech, there was no pick. I mean, so many times you see a guy that wide open, you assume an illegal pick, but it didn't happen. That was executed beautifully.
And 2 3rd-and-10 conversions on that drive. One where Taquan Marshall dropped back, used his own legs, and picked it up right there in the pass play, getting a big touchdown. Great conversions by the Yellow Jackets.
Hardman past the 25, slammed to the ground at the 29-yard line. This week's college football rankings brought to you by Capital One. Alabama, Auburn coming up. Miami already went down. Clemson, South Carolina tonight. Oklahoma, West Virginia later. Wisconsin, Minnesota later. Notre Dame at Stanford. That's a game that could be meaningful for Notre Dame because you still don't know what's going to happen in front of you. And obviously, Ohio State's big.
You know, Dave, you guys were talking about chaos with Alabama and Auburn. I think there's more chaos that would ensue if Alabama won the game, because for those clamoring for an SEC title game that would include 2 SEC teams potentially going to the playoff, that's what would create the chaos.
With Alabama winning or losing?
If Alabama winning goes.
I think it's Alabama if it loses. Here's Sony Michel off the left side, and fist fighting with a defender, taken down at the 40-yard line. They'll stop the clock to call a timeout here for Georgia. I think it's Alabama losing, because if Alabama loses, and let's say Georgia wins the SEC championship game, are you going to keep a 1-loss Alabama team out even if they didn't play in the SEC championship game, kind of like Ohio State last year?
Well, that would be a challenge, but look at it the other way. Look at it as if Alabama goes into the SEC championship game and we're to lose it to, say, to Georgia, all right? And now you're going to look at taking both of those teams.
Yeah, either way, you could potentially have 2 1-loss SEC teams that have legitimate resumes that would warrant inclusion in the college football playoff. It obviously depends a little bit on what happens in the ACC, and does Clemson take care of business tonight against South Carolina? And if they beat Miami, that becomes kind of a play-in game, Miami and Clemson in the ACC championship game, more than likely. What happens to Wisconsin? I mean, it's going to get very interesting. If there's some chaos and some matchups that go in a direction that we don't anticipate, then the committee's going to have their work cut out for them.
Georgia still has 2 timeouts, and they've got a kicker. He's got a strong leg. Fromm with a long throw that's caught by Riley Ridley. Calvin Ridley of Alabama's younger brother. And he's out of bounds at the 47-yard line, so the clock will stop with 25 seconds left. They need to get to about the 33-yard line for Rodrigo Blankenship. His long is 49. They have 2 timeouts.
Get to the 35 or the 36 too. Understand there's not really much wind, and it's an end of half situation. So if you want to back that distance up a little bit more, you can.
Another pass play, and look at all the time for Fromm, dumping it off to Isaac Nauta. They tackle him inbounds. That'll force Georgia to call a timeout. Good play by Jalen Johnson. So ball on the 43-yard line. Kirby Smart is irate, I think, with Nauta not running out of bounds. Because he had a chance. I mean, he could have just turned and headed to the sideline. He wanted to save both those timeouts.
Yeah, and you need one timeout for sure. You need one
Kirby's
timeout
livid.
for sure. Yeah, he's very upset. You need one timeout for sure to get your field goal unit on the field. Now, you don't have much of an opportunity. Let's take a look and see whether or not Nauta did, in fact, have some room to potentially run right to the sideline. I think he did.
Yeah.
I mean, at least run.
Try.
To the sideline. Try. If you get stopped short, then so be it. But try to get to the sideline. Now,
he tried to make a move.
Yeah, Naughta's only a sophomore, so football awareness still something he's working on, but Blankenship definitely has the leg. They obviously need a few more yards, about 10 at least, for them to feel real comfortable about making the opportunity.
Well, you
mentioned earlier 35, so that would be 8 more yards to give him a shot. And that field goal line, the target line, is in place based on history. Blankenship's long of 49. Georgia Tech rushes finds an open receiver, Wims to the 20-yard line. It's a 23-yard pass play. Georgia electing to hold the timeout and spike the ball to take the clock down to 3 seconds, so it's just the kick and then halftime.
And Kirby Smart very upset because Fromm was under center for a good 3 or 4 seconds before he snapped the ball and got the spike. They could have potentially tried to run one more play with about 9 seconds left or 10 seconds left. Instead, it gets all the way down to 3 seconds left, and this will be the last snap of the half, more than likely.
Although Georgia has a timeout, if there's an issue with the snap. Blankenship for 3. And it's perfect. That's big after Georgia Tech got a momentum-shifting touchdown for the Bulldogs to march down the field and get points. Pushing and shoving after the play. Kirby Smart pointing at one of the Georgia Tech players saying he started it. Georgia will get the ball to start the second half. Capital One halftime report coming up after the break, after this message and a word from our ABC stations.
Apiece. Meanwhile, Taquan Marshall, Ricky June, Georgia Tech down by 10. Georgia having the ball to start the second half.
Watch me do this.
This is the Jiffy Lube Rivalry Series.
Welcome back to college football presented by Kay Jewelers. You're watching the ACC on ESPN. Georgia in front at Georgia Tech by 10. 17-7. Bulldogs win today and then beat either Alabama or Auburn in the SEC title game, and rest assured they'll be in the college football playoff. Let's look at our first half stats brought to you by Overwatch. Georgia Tech, time of possession, dominated, and difference for Georgia was a late field goal. Made it a 10-point game, and now the short kickoff trying to force a turnover. Ball was on the ground. Looked like Georgia got it back, and the Bulldogs did at the 23-yard line. Let's take a look at our Pacific Life game summary from the first half. Georgia with excellent balance. Sony Michel rushing for 67 yards. Nick Chubb had 5 carries in the first half, and Javon Wims had 1 touchdown, another one that almost went for 6, and then big third down conversion. It was a touchdown pass by Marshall to Ricky June to get Georgia Tech within 7. And now Georgia will take over after the muffed kickoff by Holyfield. And Georgia takes over and hands the ball off on first down, and getting back to the line of scrimmage is Nick Chubb, but no gain on that play. All right, so if you're Kirby Smart and you're in the locker room, what are you telling your team? How do you feel about where you are in this ballgame?
Keep doing what you're doing. On offense, they've done a tremendous job mixing run and pass. Now, we understand that the rushing attack is always going to be the backbone of this Georgia team. Continue to try to feed Nick Chubb and Sony Michel. And then at some point here in the second half, where's DeAndre Swift? He has 1 carry to this point. He needs to become a feature player here in the next 30 minutes as well. And defensively, keep doing what you're doing. You've given up some nice plays by Georgia Tech, but for the most part, they've held them in check and forced them into some methodical situations.
Got an injury timeout. While we have a moment, I just want to ask you, because you played in the Alabama-Auburn game several times, and obviously this is rivalry Saturday, and each rivalry game means something special to just about everybody that loves college football. I mean, on a day where you know Alabama, Auburn, do you got even butterflies even though you're not playing them? Are you thinking about it?
No, I'm right here. I have butterflies for this game, that's for sure, because rivalry games are what make college football so unique. You get one shot at your opposition, and just like this game here, when you're playing within a state and you know the guys on the other side of the field, it's just makes it even that much more special, and it's really a lot of fun. And these two schools here, 70 miles separate them, and they're giving it all they have because bragging rights are on the line.
Michelle can't get out the gate. Excellent tackle by Brant Mitchell, the middle linebacker. Otherwise, that was a big play. Now a huge third down for Tech's defense to try to get Georgia off the field.
That was a tackle right there that Georgia Tech was not making in the first half. Sony Michel has been so effective, especially after first contact. Big play right here. Let's see if Jake Fromm looks in the direction of Javon Wims, who's been their most productive receiver on the day so far.
4 catches, 61 yards, and a touchdown for Wims. Tech blitzing. Fromm gets leveled and throws it out of play. They finally get to Fromm. It was Corey Griffin and Antonio Simmons with pressure.
You can see the pressure. That's an all-out blitz by Georgia Tech, understanding that they're going to put their defensive backs on islands, but Jake Fromm's going to have to get the ball out of his hands extremely quick. They're trying to dial one up downfield, sailed it out of bounds. Good call by defensive coordinator Ted Roof.
Isolek's punt, fair caught at the 35-yard line by Brett Stewart. Well, we got 2 top 4 teams that are in action later today on ESPN. Penalty marker down. We'll get to that in a second. Oklahoma with Baker Mayfield, not a captain, not starting the game today, taking on West Virginia on Senior Day in Norman. And then it's Clemson and South Carolina, 7:30 Eastern on ESPN. Clemson win. They got Miami next week. If they win that game, they're in the college football playoff. Seems like for a few teams, the path is clear. You control your own destiny. For others, you need some help. And Ohio State has tied Michigan. That was a 14-0 Michigan lead. Ohio State has stormed back to tie that game, but obviously the Buckeyes need to win and then get some help to get into the college football playoff with those 2 losses. Georgia, they just need to win out, win this game, win the SEC title game at Mercedes-Benz Stadium just down the street here in Atlanta, and they're going to be in the playoff. Wrapped up at the line of scrimmage is Benson. He actually lost a yard.
Fellas talking to Paul Johnson as he came out of the locker room. They've accomplished 1 of 2 tasks so far in the third quarter. They've tackled better. That was one of the things that he had tried to get across to his team. You got to tackle better so that we don't give up those leaky yards after contact. And then secondly, he felt like the game is being played at the pace they want to play it. They've slowed it down. They kept the ball away from Georgia by and large, but what they haven't done is finish drives. The goal offensively is to finish drives, get some points on the board, keep Jake Fromm in that offense and that backfield on the sideline.
One thing that hasn't helped, Tom, is their inability to get positive yardage on first down. On 2nd and long, they take a shot. Searcy just can't make the play at the 35. Incomplete. J.R. Reed in coverage.
Searcy's looking for a pass interference, but look at Reed. He's turning around, trying to make a play on the football. Well covered in the back end by the safety. It's exactly what you do. There's going to be contact, but the defender also has an equal opportunity to get to the football as well. That's a good job by this officiating crew, keeping the flag in their pocket, even though Quay Searcy felt otherwise.
Well, even though he grabbed his arm, the left hand, before the ball arrived.
He was trying to go up and make a play on it. Didn't bother me. I think it's a good no call.
Marshall rolling out, now stepping up, and he cannot outrun Roquan Smith. And so it'll be 4th down.
I know we're not tracking it, but I really think that Roquan Smith might have 20 tackles already. Here he is lined up over the left guard. And you can see him. He's just following Marshall the whole way. Quarterback spy. He has no other responsibility other than Taquan Marshall. He followed him on the half roll, then brought him down, set up 4th down.
Punt nearly gets blocked. They run into the punter, and there's a flag, but it was 4th and 7, so it won't give him a first down. Hardman signaled for the fair catch. Prather Hudson ran into the punter, but again, that's just a 5-yard foul. And it'll make it 4th and 2. We'll see if there's a re-kick, how they handle this situation. I mean, you hit the kicking foot. If you'd hit the plant foot, that'd have been roughing, but that's just a
5-yard foul. Running into the kicker, defense number 24. The penalty will be declined. First down.
They're happy with the yardage on the punt. Georgia will take over around its 23-yard line when we come back. Kick off your Week 12 NFL Sunday with the Countdown Crew at 10 a.m. Eastern on ESPN. It's also streaming live on the ESPN app. And our Week 12 Monday Night Football matchup features Baltimore, the Texans. Monday Night Kickoff. A Monday Night Countdown kicks off our coverage at 6 Eastern on ESPN. So Georgia takes over on offense for the second time here in the third quarter on its 23-yard line after a 50-yard punt.
First and 10, Georgia, ball on the Bulldogs' 23-yard line.
Jake Fromm, true freshman quarterback, had an outstanding campaign. They run Chubb off the right side, and he's too hard to stop. Gain of 12, first down. Kirby Smart played defensive back at Georgia, one of 9 head coaches of the Power 5 to coach at their alma mater. He was an all-SEC first-team player back in 1998 at Georgia. And then a longtime assistant for Nick Saban, including at Alabama, where he won 4 national championships.
He's done a tremendous job in a very short period of time getting this team to the point they're at.
Chubb to the outside. Lowers the shoulder out at the 42. I mean, you look at what Mark Richt is doing at Miami, and clearly Mark Richt is an excellent coach. They felt at Georgia that it was time for a different voice, a different style. And last year was rough. I mean, they were not good last year, but it's been a quick turnaround.
It really has, and it really started in February of this year. The recruiting group that they brought in, the freshmen that are already playing big-time minutes, even along the offensive line where you don't see that very often. He's going to transform this program quickly.
Chubb met behind the line. It's going to be a loss in the play. Hit Branch back there along with St. Amour. It'll be third down.
I was with Kirby for 4 years, and I just think the world of him. I really do. The way he engages with every single player on the team. He doesn't work as much with the offense. Naturally, his background's on the defensive side of the football. But such hands-on coaching, always teaching, and he's a tremendous motivator as well. Not surprised at all to see Georgia in the position they're in this early, even though most would say that they're a year away. This roster, the way they're coached and how talented they are, they can play with anybody.
Brown to the air on 3rd and 4, and it's pulled in by Wims again. There's just no pressure at all, so Fromm stands back there, and it's just one-on-one, and Wims going to win that every time. It's a gain of 16.
And when Kirby got the job, he said, look, don't necessarily evaluate me this first year. Evaluate me in February. And Tom, he's done a tremendous job on the recruiting front as well.
Well, he has. You know, there's a lot of true freshmen that were in that last class that are in there 2 deep, that are getting valuable snaps. And listen, he's making his mark in state, and that's what this Georgia fan base wants. They want the best in state to stay in red and black.
Another deep ball from Hardman, pulls it in inside the 5-yard line. 38 yards, setting up Georgia first and goal inside the 5.
Mecole Hardman going up and making a very contested catch. Once a defensive back has moved over to the offensive side, and he has not looked back. He's so explosive and fast. And now he's added this to his repertoire as well. Very capable with the ball in his hands. And really good high-pointing the football.
Give Jake Fromm a lot of credit, too, here. He replaced Jacob Eason, who started all the games last year as a freshman. Fromm comes in against Notre Dame and has not looked back. Michel bouncing it to the outside. What a great cut! He scores! Touchdown, Georgia! twisted ankles today from Georgia Tech DBs trying to stop that guy.
He is just so elusive. Look at how sudden his feet stop. Boom. Just brush him to the side and jog into the end zone. At 215 pounds, he moves so effortlessly side to side. He has been so special over the last few years.
And the extra point is good. Michel closing in on 900 yards this season. Chubb is already over 1,000. And Georgia trying to win in Atlanta against Georgia Tech for the 9th straight time. And it's looking good right now for Jake Fromm and company.
College football on ABC, presented by K Jewelers, is brought to you by Jaguar, the art of performance, and Duluth Trading, tough and genius workwear designed and tested by tradesmen.
That was cool to see the Georgia players in a road game taking time to visit the Children's Hospital of Atlanta. There's Jake Fromm, the quarterback. They passed Greg McElroy, Tom Luganville in Atlanta, and the Bulldogs are in command right now. 24-7 they lead. They hang on here and then win the SEC championship game next week. You can bet they'll be in college football playoff. It'll either be Alabama or Auburn, the winner of the Iron Bowl. Jerry Howard, who's had trouble fielding kickoffs, knocked out of bounds at the 20.
Stop me if you've heard this before. Sony Michel is putting on a show. Look at him on this draw play, making a linebacker miss. Look at the yards after contact. I mean, just doesn't stop moving forward. Then he gets a little bit more room out there on the perimeter. Runs right through a tackle. Falls forward. 8.5 yards. How about this? The suddenness in which he's able to stop his momentum, brush a defender to the side, and accelerate forward for the touchdown. He's putting on a clinic today, averaging over 7 yards a carry.
You think of all the great backs going back to Herschel Walker they've had at Georgia over the years. 2 more on this roster, and Chubb, Michel, maybe more, maybe Swift as well before it's all said and done. Quay Cersei wrapped up as Georgia just flies to the ball. Gain of 2. Taco Bell, a proud partner of the College Football Playoff. Be on the lookout for Taco Bell student sections and passionate fans like these at games all season long. Georgia Tech in danger of falling to 5-6, which would mean no bowl game unless there aren't enough teams that qualify. Then 5 and 7 teams can get into the mix. This doesn't feel like a 5 and 7 team. They lose by 1 to Tennessee, 1 to Miami. Hang with Clemson on the road. Marshall gives the ball up. He got drilled as he let it go to Cottrell. Aaron Davis with a big hit. They consider on those pitch plays Marshall a defenseless player. Let's see if this was a clean hit.
Just pushed him in the chest. It's a clean hit for sure. Once again, this Georgia defense has this Georgia Tech offense in a difficult spot on 3rd and long. They've been really good for a majority of the day on 1st and 2nd down, which is crucial against an attack like this.
How many plays in the playbook for 3rd and 7 for Georgia Tech? Marshall rolling out and thrown out of play by Roquan Smith. Man, have we seen a performance at linebacker this year? We've got him up here at 13 tackles, loss of 7.
I promise you it's more than that. It certainly feels that way. There's Roquan Smith, number 3. You see him drop into coverage, and he recognizes as soon as Taquan Marshall leaves that throwing posture, that's when he triggers, and he goes right to the boundary, which is exactly where Marshall was going as well. Roquan Smith has been everywhere today for the Dogs defense.
Excellent punt. Hardman fields it on the 36-yard line. Spins out of a tackle. And then gets tattooed at the 33-yard line. 47-yard punt. Not much on the return. But Georgia's in full control of this game midway through the 3rd. Now it's time for We've Got You Covered, brought to you by Jiffy Lube. With the exception of the hiccup defensively against Auburn, Georgia's defense statistically, and we see it here live and in color, as good as any in college football.
And I think the way they execute is what really is staggering. This is not an easy offense to recognize and prepare for. It just doesn't seem like there's been any steps that weren't taken in the correct direction. They are so dialed into what the Yellow Jackets are doing offensively.
Nick Chubb, number 4 all-time SEC in rushing, gets to the 37-yard line for 4 more yards.
Well, fellas, we touched on what Kirby Smart and his staff have done in recruiting. You look to a year ago, brought in the 3rd-ranked class overall. This year, they currently in the 2018 class have the 5th-ranked class, essentially top 10 classes going back several years. But it's the in-state players, we'll continue to talk about that, and it's a point that needs to be made, that are going to be the success or failure of recruiting at Georgia.
Fromm keeping it here, nailed out of bounds by Austin, short of the line to gain. Fromm just hops up and runs back to the huddle.
Well, and there's an example of last year, an in-state product in Jake Fromm. He comes in as a true freshman. And, you know, consider this when you're a Georgia fan and you're following Georgia recruiting. Everybody makes this assumption that, oh, well, we got to keep all the best players at home. That's impossible. There's too many good ones, and they're going to go to other places. The key is making sure that the guys that you choose to go on are the guys that pan out for you. You can't have a Josh Harvey Clemens come into your program and a Raekwon McMillan or a Carl Lawson leave.
With 3 tight ends in the game, Michelle powers forward and picks up the first down.
And Tom, the state of Georgia in general is one of the most talent-rich states in the entire country. Per capita, I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a state that is more rich when it comes to talent. There's so many guys at so many different positions that can play at a high level. 3 of your top quarterbacks this year are from the state of Georgia. You have some elite running backs. You have some tremendous defensive linemen and offensive linemen. Every position you can find here in this talent-rich state.
Press set it down for Georgia with a 17-point lead from the 43-yard line. Chubb to midfield for 7 yards.
You guys, in this class in particular, you know, and Greg and I have touched on this with quarterbacks. You take a look at Justin Fields, ESPN's.com's #1 ranked overall player. Now, this is a completely different dynamic than what they've had with Jacob Eason and Jake Fromm. This is a tremendous athlete, but he's not an athlete that can just run the spread. He's a thrower and a pure passer that happens to be a great athlete. So I just love the fact that he invites the competition. He's not worried about the depth chart. He commits to Georgia knowing exactly what they have, and he doesn't care.
Chubb able to get the first down.
You know, offensive coordinator Jim Chaney, when he first got here, and I was talking to him in pregame warmup about some guys in the 2019 class, you know, they want to be more athletic. They want to be more dynamic. And Greg, you know, we've seen Jake Fromm today just sneaky enough with his athleticism to where if he pulls the ball, you're not ready for it. What Georgia wants to do is they want to force the defense on each and every snap to have to defend the quarterback at all times. And that's the type of talent and skill set that Justin Fields brings that maybe they haven't had before since, like, let's say, DJ Shockley.
Michelle, more missed tackles by Georgia Tech. That's been the story the last few weeks for the Yellow Jackets, and Georgia getting way too much on the ground on first down. That's 8 yards.
Yeah, Sony Michel's so difficult to bring down, but touching more on what Tom was talking about with Justin Fields coming in, Jake Eason, one of the top quarterbacks at the high school level a couple years ago, the backup now, Jake Fromm, one of the top guys last year. You go where you want to go, and then you know what? Hey, I'm going to do my best, you do your best, and let's see who wins the job. I appreciate and applaud the young men that have chosen Georgia at the quarterback position because it's a stocked roster. But you know what? Who would have thought Jake Fromm's under center right now?
Michelle again. It's another Georgia first down. But it'll be interesting in the spring, right?
Yeah, I mean,
what happens if Georgia, you know, gets to the college football playoff? They win next week, and Jake Fromm's the guy to get you there.
Well, I think iron sharpens iron, right? Competition brings out the best in everybody. And we talked to Kirby Smart about Jacob Eason and Jake Fromm. He said, look, the competition's actually still gone on. Even though Jake Fromm's been the starter, he's performed better in practice. Therefore, he started the games. The competition should never end. And I think that's what you see. When you look at the best programs, there's competition at every single starting spot.
Michelle Swift rather on the carry that time gets hit hard, only a 1-yard gain.
And the goal, guys, and Greg was a part of this at Alabama, is to create a roster that is so talented that the environment of competition is created by the players. The coaches don't have to monitor it. They don't have to create it. They don't have to preach it. The players will know real quickly if I'm not performing, the guy to my left and the guy to my right is every bit as good as I am, and I'm going to be on the field, on the sideline with the coach.
Yeah, that personal accountability is huge, and the way to get that is by stocking that roster full of talent.
From off play action all day to throw, overshoots Hardman, the intended receiver. 3rd and 9. Well, look, I think you guys would agree that any great program starts with an offensive line, and they've got an offensive line right now. So you've got these great backs. You got more great backs coming in next year. You got all these young quarterbacks who you can groom, and you have a defense. I mean, Georgia's here to stay.
Yeah, and there might be a year early this year. They're really with a true freshman quarterbacks and young pieces in the trenches. But man, they have played so well and poised within the system. Have had some really big moments. They're hoping to have a few more.
And Andrew Thomas at right tackle. He's a true freshman. He's played well. Big hole again. Swift off to the races. Stretching out, but won't get in. Taken out of bounds by Austin. 32-yard gain. It'll be 1st and goal from inside the 2.
Speaking of true freshmen, DeAndre Swift makes his presence known. Says, don't forget about me. I'm still here. And I had someone in the Georgia program that said DeAndre Swift right now as a true freshman might be our best football player. He's that versatile. And I'm really looking forward to seeing this young man. Of course, a very highly recruited player himself. And when Sony Michel and Nick Chubb depart for the NFL, there won't be much drop-off. Number 7 is the feature back.
See if they try to give him a touchdown here. Swift over the top. Touchdown, Georgia.
DeAndre Swift going vertical and landing in the end zone. Fresh legs. Pretty impressive by the freshman.
11 plays, 67-yard drive that took almost 6 minutes. 10 of the 11 plays on that drive were run plays. And it is a 24-point Georgia lead with 1:23 to go.
DeAndre Swift saying, don't forget about me. We might have some All-Americans in front, but I'm a star too. So is his quarterback, Franz. Love it.
Welcome back to college football presented by K Jewelers as part of the Jiffy Lube Rivalry Series. Dave Pasch, Greg McElroy, Tom Luganville at Georgia Tech. The Georgia running backs, Sony Michel, Nick Chubb, DeAndre Swift. Swift getting several carries on that drive, paying it off with a touchdown. And the Georgia Tech coaches told us this week they think Georgia goes 5 deep at running back with Elijah Holyfield and Brian Herrien. Clobbered at the 12. Let's go to Cassidy in the studio.
Thanks, David. Let's go back to Ann Arbor. Tied at 14 between Ohio State and Michigan, and Karan Higdon on 3rd and goal gets in to put the Wolverines up, but the extra point was blocked, so it's 20-14 in the 3rd quarter. Dave, Greg, Tom, back to you.
All right, man, that one last year. That might have all the great Michigan-Ohio State games that won last year in Columbus.
That was pretty good.
Might have been the best.
Knowing the stakes, too. I mean, Big Ten championship berth alive. Man.
Pushing and shoving afterwards, and a penalty flag is thrown.
Well, Greg and Dave, you're talking about Georgia being 5 deep at running back. When Chubb and Michel leave, they're going to have 2 incoming freshmen in Zamir White and James Cook.
After the play, personal foul, number 8 on the kicking team. 15-yard penalty from the end of the run, 1st down.
That are going to pick up right where these guys left off. James Cook, by the way, Dalvin Cook's younger brother.
So Riley Ridley committing the personal foul. Good starting field position, relatively speaking, for Georgia Tech, considering they're going to be at the 10-yard line. A lot more great games today. Wisconsin, Minnesota coming up next on ABC. Clemson, South Carolina tonight on ESPN. Notre Dame, Stanford. Important game for Notre Dame. Stanford needs some help to get into the Pac-12 championship game. It all depends on the Washington State outcome. And of course, the Iron Bowl coming up later. Tech runs left. Benson to the 32, picking up 5. Our time for today's Aflac trivia question. Aflac! We asked this with Miami in mind, okay? Because they lost yesterday. We anticipating Georgia, what happens if Georgia loses? Okay, the last team to lose the regular season finale, then win the national championship. Any thoughts?
I know the answer to this one.
You know the answer for sure. So it's not a guess. You know it.
I know it.
What do you got?
I'm going to go LSU 2007.
First down run for Benson. I call it cheating.
No, because I remember they lost to Darren McFadden, Felix Jones, and Arkansas in the final game of the regular season. And then the real interesting part.
Don't look at the monitor.
The real interesting part was that they wouldn't have gotten into the national championship had West Virginia not lost to Pitt.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Which Pitt, of course, beat Miami yesterday. So it comes full circle, Dave.
You were like 11 years old at this point. How do you remember all this stuff at such a young age when all this occurred? Marshall, nice run, picking up the first down to the 47-yard line.
Why do you assume he's cheating, Dave? That's not very nice.
And the craziest thing, too, is the best team in the country at the end of the season might have been Georgia. Remember how good they were playing?
Oh, man.
They played against Hawaii, I believe, in the Sugar Bowl.
Hey, Tom, I want to ask Greg this. Who was the head coach of LSU when they won it in 2007?
Sorry, I couldn't hear you. Say that again.
The head coach of LSU in 2007 when they won the national championship.
Lester Miles.
Okay. Listen, if you're listening. What? What? What was wrong about that question?
Good question.
Okay. Back after this message, a word to our ABC stations. All right, so we're having some fun with the Aflac trivia question answer. LSU being the last team to lose the regular season finale to win the national championship. Les Miles is only in a job for a couple of years. I thought one of you might answer Nick Saban. Who are the coaches at Arkansas, Tennessee, and Ohio State?
I know Arkansas was Houston Nutt, Tennessee, Phil Fulmer, and Ohio State. I'll let Lugs have that one.
Dress. Starts with a sweater vest.
Yes.
Marshall on the loose. Inside the 30-yard line. Taquan Marshall. All the way to the 23 before he gets slammed to the ground by DeAndre Walker. Jim Tressel, right? I thought I heard you say Tress, Luke.
I did. Yes, Jim Tressel. I whispered it.
That was when people were thinking, man, the Big Ten's bad. Remember Ohio State got blown out?
Yeah, they got beat bad by LSU, and the year before they got beat bad by Florida. You're right. They had Troy Smith at quarterback who won the Heisman. 06.
Marshall keeps it here, faked the pitch, and held on to the ball with Georgia diving at it. He's to the 21-yard line. Well, the guy that's been the head coach here at Georgia Tech for the last 10 years is Paul Johnson. He's done a terrific job. He's been the ACC Coach of the Year 3 times. He's won at Georgia 3 times. Never beaten them here. In fact, Georgia hasn't lost in Atlanta since '99. But you think about what he did at Navy and the success he had there. How come Ken Niumatalolo of Navy has not gotten a chance? Maybe he doesn't want to leave, but it's a name you never seem to hear. But if Paul Johnson can do it at a school like Georgia Tech, why not Niumatalolo? Well defended by Walker on the quarterback Marshall. It's going to be 3rd and long.
And some people have suggested that maybe Paul Johnson might like to maybe have a new challenge at some point down the road. Some people have suggested maybe at Kansas State when Bill Snyder retires. Ken Niumatalolo, of course, turned down BYU a couple years ago, a place that he said was his dream job. He decided to stay at Navy. So the triple option offense is alive and well. It's just a matter of where you would want to bring that to town, because it's a question as to whether or not you can win a national championship with it. How high can you go with this style of attack?
3rd and 10. They're in 4-down territory. Marshall to the end zone, and it is intercepted. And Baker takes it out. Tackled at the 15-yard line. Probably not the smartest move to run out of the end zone that deep, but it's the 2nd interception of the season for DeAndre Baker. Georgia Tech trying to get back in the ball game, but TaQuon Marshall throws an interception, which might seal the deal. Well, you know how Miami's got the turnover chain? Well, at Georgia, they have these spiked shoulder pads, which you'd see at a Raider game maybe. But you get savage. You get that on your, wear that on your back. DeAndre Baker with the interception. Who came up with this, by the way? I think it's really cool. I think it's great. Great motivation. Not much there on the jet suite for Crumpton. Take a look at our Pacific Life game summary. Roquan Smith has been everywhere for Georgia. 9 tackles, 3 for loss, and a sack. The balanced offensive Georgia. They've just dominated, period.
They have on both sides of the line of scrimmage. There have been a few opportunities for Georgia to really try to air it out, but they haven't had to because they've just been pounding the ball between the tackles with those elite running backs.
And Blake Herrion is in the game right now. He collects the pitch, hurdles a defender, and out to the 22-yard line.
I tell you, fellas, you mentioned Roquan Smith. I think he's the best pound-for-pound linebacker that I've seen from field level all year long.
Yeah.
He's that good.
And it's amazing because last year, Tom, I mean, so much was made about Reuben Foster at Alabama and Jared Davis at Florida.
Yep.
And some of the great linebackers at LSU and Ohio State had some really good linebackers as well.
Hassan Reddick at Temple.
Hassan Reddick at Temple on the edge. It's amazing to see Roquan Smith now that some of the elite stardom has kind of disappeared. He has stepped into that role and is by far the best middle linebacker in the game right now.
From on the money, Crumpton with no defender in sight. Only Paydirt he can see. Touchdown, Georgia, 78 yards. There is a penalty marker in the backfield. Beautiful throw by Jake Fromm.
Personal foul, roughing the passer, number 97 defense. That 15-yard penalty will be assessed on the succeeding kickoff. Touchdown stands.
What a great throw by Jake Fromm. Knowing that he's about to get hit, throwing the corner route perfectly in stride. And nothing but green grass out in front of Crumpton. You can see he gets hit low and high. What I love is he didn't look back at the official. He didn't look at the 2 guys that hit him. He looked at that ball sailing perfectly into the hands of Crumpton. True competitor and a very accurate throw rewarded with a big touchdown.
And again, the protection for Georgia. That offensive line doing a heck of a job. Fromm with so much time to throw. It's a blowout. 38-7, Georgia on the road.
College football on ABC is presented by Kay Jewelers. Kay Jewelers, the #1 jewelry store in America. Every kiss begins with K. In part by Pacific Life, experience the power of Pacific. And Nissan, innovation that excites.
That's great. A lot to get excited about if you're a Georgia fan. They get 38 points on the board. They're playing for the SEC championship next week. A spot in the college football playoff more than likely if they win. They got a quarterback, Jake Fromm, 78-yard touchdown pass, the longest of his career. There's Mercedes-Benz Stadium where the SEC title game will be held, and also the college football playoff national championship game in January.
That might have been Jake Fromm's best throw of the season in terms of what was coming down the barrel.
Yeah.
The accuracy on the end result, Greg.
I've watched every throw that he's made, and I think his best throw was that flea flicker on the first play of the game against Mississippi State. But that one was close, and you can see obviously what Georgia has in store. And I tell you what, man, defensively, their defense is going to keep them in it. It's just a matter of whether or not they can be effective on 1st and 2nd down running the football. It's the big key as to whether or not they can go the distance, because they absolutely can based on talent.
Because of the penalty, they kick off from midfield, and Georgia Tech will start on the 25-yard line. Take a look at the college football playoff rankings and important games the rest of the day. Now, Miami lost at Pitt yesterday. Miami plays Clemson next week. Clemson's on the road against rival South Carolina tonight on ESPN. And we're about 30 minutes away from the Iron Bowl getting going, and also 45 minutes away from Oklahoma, West Virginia, and on ABC, Wisconsin, Minnesota.
It's going to be a long afternoon of sitting on the couch and enjoying a lot of college football. I am looking forward to dialing in to some of these incredible matchups over the next few hours.
Daquan Marshall keeping it. And he gets trampled at the 28-yard line as Georgia continues to fly to the football. That's Richard LeCount III, a true freshman on the tackle. And that Wisconsin-Minnesota game is interesting. Even though Minnesota's been getting spanked lately, you know, that's a rivalry game. It's on the road. I'm sure the weather's not great. And Wisconsin knows that, you know, they control their own fate at this point.
And that's a bitter rivalry. It really is. I mean, Wisconsin, they've been dominant. No doubt.
That's into the 31. It'll be third down.
Greg, Dave's been trying to sell that one to us all week.
Well, he's trying to talk himself out of it. As a Madison, Wisconsin native, our very own Dave Pash is trying to make sure that the Badgers are not going to fall subject to rat poison. That's what it really comes down to. We know your tricks, Dave.
Well, that win over Michigan was one of the biggest, even though they've won Rose Bowls and had some big victories. That's one of the biggest in school history, to beat Michigan and Jim Harbaugh last week. But now they have to play a Minnesota team that's coming off getting blown out by Northwestern last week. Wow, what a hit by LeCount, but Marshall got the first down. Cassidy in the studio.
Thanks, Dave. Ohio State, Michigan. JT Barrett left this game with an apparent knee injury, so Dwayne Haskins in at QB breaks off a 22-yard run here. That would set up a 1-yard score by J.K. Dobbins, so Ohio State with a 1-point lead right now in the third. Dave, Greg, Tom, back to you.
Well, our crew was there, Cassidy, in 2014.
Yeah, I remember that.
End of the Michigan game when Barrett is injured, is done for the year. Cardale Jones comes in, throws a pass that looks just awful. And we start talking about, man, how is Ohio State going to do this with this guy? Well, they beat Wisconsin in the Big Ten championship game. They beat Alabama, and then they win the college football playoff national championship with a backup quarterback.
Yeah, none of the games that they played in were even close. I know that Alabama game was only a 7-point margin of victory, but it was really a 14-point margin of victory. I mean, that team, that roster in 2014 is so stacked. This Ohio State team, of course, a few more questions, but JT Barrett's health, very important. It'll be interesting to see what the diagnosis is on that.
2nd and 7 for Georgia Tech on its 40-yard line, 9 minutes to go. And a huge hit in the backfield as Marshall is leveled by Walker. Boy, it's been a disappointing last couple of weeks for Georgia Tech fans. It looked like they were headed for a bowl game. I mean, they had the game against Tennessee at the start of the year that they could have won, lost by a point. At Miami, lose by a point. They beat Virginia Tech, but they just couldn't win on the road. And because the Central Florida game, I don't know that they would have won that game anyway, but because that was canceled, first of all, Georgia Tech doesn't get an opportunity to play that 12th game. And for UCF, I mean, that could have been a challenging game for them. Right now, they're the highest ranked group of 5 team. Running room on 3rd and 8. 4th down for Georgia Tech.
Obviously, Georgia Tech played well at home, this performance notwithstanding, but just couldn't get it done on the road. And they had so many opportunities to finish games. Miami needed a drive and a couple of great plays to set up the game-winning field goal. They fumbled with the ball in their hand against Tennessee, had a chance to potentially win that one. Virginia, I mean, there were so many opportunities for this Georgia Tech team to pick up some victories. Really, they're better than their record might indicate.
Akil Crumpton, who just scored on a 78-yard touchdown pass, is the return man here. And fair caught around the 18-yard line. Looks like Jake Fromm is done for the day. We'll see Jacob Eason. Looks like that's a case. Rivalry weekend, we got 2 teams looking to avoid upsets and stay in the college football playoff top 4, like number 4 Oklahoma at home against West Virginia. No Will Grier at quarterback for the Mountaineers. Then after that, South Carolina and Clemson. Tigers lost earlier in the season on the road at Syracuse. They blew out South Carolina a year ago. Jake Fromm, terrific day. When Kirby Smart mentioned Fromm yesterday in our conversation with him, he just kept using the word efficient. he was more than that. I mean, he was borderline spectacular at times. He had great offensive line. And so Jacob Eason is in the game at quarterback, and they run Elijah Holyfield on first down. And he gets about 4 yards. Well, they thought this was going to be Eason's team coming into the year. He started the opener against Appalachian State, hurt his knee, and has not been back in the lineup save for a play here or there since.
And you feel for that young man. He was the guy coming in, got all the first team reps all spring, all fall camp. And then early in the game against Appalachian State, he goes down with that knee injury. You just hate it for him. You really do, because you never want to see a guy lose his job because of an injury. It's a no fault of his own. Jake Fromm's come in, seized the reins on the position, and has played at a very high level within this offense.
Well, you made the point earlier that, you know, Kirby Smart said as they run Holyfield again for a first down out to the 35, that the competition never ended. Even though Jake Fromm had won the job, it wasn't as if every single practice it's like, okay, we're riding Fromm and that's it. It was, let's see if Jake Eason can push him a little bit. And there was competition.
There was. And he's a capable thrower. I mean, if you just go down on the field and watch Jacob Eason throw it as compared to Jake Fromm, you would say every single day of the week that Jacob Eason would be your starting quarterback. But it's the little things that Jake Fromm has done so well. Understanding the situation, moving in the pocket when necessary, tucking it and running it when the opportunity is there to pick up some yards with his legs, and then, of course, not putting the ball in a difficult spot by turning it over.
Holyfield on the cutback. Means about 9.
I think the one thing that maybe Jacob Eason has learned this fall is with Jake Fromm coming in and maybe the attention to detail, the little nuances of the position that don't have to do with physical talent. I think probably it's been healthy for Jacob Eason, although unfortunate, to be able to sit back and maybe see a mode of operation, see another guy perform, see situations when you're standing off and you're taking a look and you're not in the mix that hopefully he can grow from going forward.
And they say he's matured a lot through this adversity, and that's a credit to him.
Started all 12 games last year. Eason did at quarterback. Brian Harrion, the ball carrier, first down to midfield.
And Tom, so many people have started to speculate, you know, where does Jacob Eason go? Does he stay at Georgia? Is he content continuing to compete with the position? Will he be on campus and on the roster next year? I don't know the answer to those things, but he's handled this situation, and it's a difficult situation, beautifully, and you got to give him a lot of credit for that. I think he's earned a lot of people's respect for the way he's handled it. Drifted into from the spotlight into the shadows, and has supported the freshman Jake Fromm all the way.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And listen, he hasn't lost his job to anything he's done, and that's the unfortunate part of it.
On first down, Harrion pounds to the 46. Tackled by A.J. Gray.
And if in fact Jacob Eason is playing in his final season at Georgia and decides to look elsewhere for a fresh start, he will be on the mind of a lot of coaches. Of course, he'll have to sit out in 2018 if in fact he decides to transfer. But with the arm talent and the fact that he does have a season's worth of playing experience under his belt, Tom, I would think he'd probably be one of the top targets in college football from a transfer standpoint.
No doubt, and he doesn't lose eligibility because he still has a redshirt year, so that makes him very attractive.
Holyfield gets only a couple. It'll be third down, 3.5 to go here. Georgia 38, Georgia Tech 7.
You know, guys, you think of just how far this team has come. You know, we had them a year ago against Ole Miss, and this team doesn't even slightly resemble that team a year ago. I mean, it's like a 180-degree difference, and I think you got to attribute so much of that to just coaching and process and philosophy, and Kirby Smart deserves a lot of credit.
Yeah, he does, and I think identifying young players that are mature enough to handle it, because a lot of freshmen are playing significant roles.
The one thing is you get blown out at Auburn, it makes you wonder, okay, you got Auburn or Alabama next week. Who would you rather play? Would you rather play an Auburn team that just pounded you, but it's so hard to beat a team
After
twice, especially in a month.
Personal foul, number 9, defense. 15 yards from succeeding spot. First down.
That's on Victor Alexander. Would you rather have Auburn, a team that beat you, but again, hard to beat a team twice, or would you rather play Alabama, a team you haven't seen this year?
I mean, if I'm a player and I'm a competitor, I want another shot at Auburn. That's just me. I mean, knowing how things went, but either way, it's not like you can look at Auburn and Alabama and say, oh, well, this team's significantly better than this team, and this is why we'd rather play them. I mean, those two teams are very closely matched up. And Georgia's going to have to play their A game next week to win. There's no doubt, because the top 3 teams in the SEC, Alabama, Auburn, and Georgia, are all legit.
You saw the last win over Alabama for Georgia was 2007. Holyfield trying to get outside, steps out, so that'll stop the clock.
Holyfield carries the ball.
There's obviously that long conversation, too, where a Nick Saban disciple has never beaten him. 0-11. Most recently, Jimbo Fisher at the beginning of the season at Florida State. So Kirby Smart has a chance next week, if in fact Alabama beats Auburn today, to become the first Nick Saban disciple to dethrone his mentor. And they have the roster to do it. There's no doubt. It's going to come down to execution, and that's why you love a matchup like you're going to see next week, whether it's Alabama, Auburn against Georgia. It's all about execution, who plays best on Saturday.
Is this the best offensive line that we've seen in the SEC this year?
It's awfully close. It's awfully close, and it's truly amazing what they've done. I mean, that was a hindrance last year. It really was, and now it's become a real strength and an asset to a national championship contender.
And obviously, to beat a team like Alabama or Auburn, you got to be really good up front on both sides of the ball. Georgia is, and that will make for a terrific SEC championship game just down the street next week. 10:30 Eastern tonight, following Clemson, South Carolina on ESPN. It's Sports Center with Linda Cohn and Kenny Mayne. Our experts will weigh in on the impact of the Iron Bowl on the college football playoff race. The latest on Kevin Sumlin. There's already a handful of SEC jobs that are open. And Baker Mayfield, Heisman moment. Again, he's not starting, not a captain today, but obviously he'll play against West Virginia. That game coming up in about 40 minutes on ESPN. And the Governor's Cup Trophy, which was it started in 1995, even though this series goes back to 1893. Georgia is 16-6 over Georgia Tech since they started the award, and the Bulldogs are going to get it again here in 2017 after losing in Athens last year. Final minute here, one more snap, and this one's over. And Uga can celebrate with a big bone tonight, because they're going to be 11-1. Now 4th down here, so I guess they got to figure out how they want to handle this. Probably 2 plays. If they don't get it, then Georgia Tech will take over on downs and run a play, or just take a knee. But got to at least snap it here for Georgia with about 12 seconds. They run Holyfield, and he does not get the first down, so the clock will stop on the change of possession. 7 seconds left. Georgia Tech's running on the field. The players are ready for this one to be over, but they got to snap it one more time because of the turnover. Impressive showing by the Bulldogs, and that is going to be a great. I mean, there's a great game coming up in the Iron Bowl, but that game next week between either Georgia and Auburn, Georgia, Alabama, spectacular.
Yeah, and it'll be really interesting too. I mean, if Alabama and Auburn is as good as we all think it has a chance to be, Georgia, their starters got a quarter worth of rest here today. Their backups have been playing a majority of the 4th quarter and some of the 3rd, so maybe something to keep an eye on as far as fresh legs in next week's game. But everyone's beat up, everyone's tired at this point of the season. It's really going to come down to who execute at the highest level next week for the SEC title.
Sometimes playing a triple option team before you have the big game as they fumble the exchange. Sometimes that's difficult. I'm not sure that's really going to be a problem for Georgia. This one's over. Georgia's 11-1. The 3rd time school history. But they have an 11-1 record. They'll go for win number 12 next week when they play in the SEC championship game for the first time in 5 years. Their last SEC title was 2005. Their last national title, 1980. Here's Tom.
Well, Coach, is this one of those games where you just wipe your brow after and say, whoosh?
Yeah, you do. They got a good football team. They run a very hard offense to prepare for. Our kids took the challenge head on, did a good job preparing for it. Thought we controlled the ball offensively in the second half. So those are some good things.
As far as how this team's overall performance was throughout the entire season, it's a long gauntlet. Now you head into the SEC championship game. How would you assess your kids?
Our kids have played really hard. They've gotten better throughout the year. They bought into what we're trying to do as a program, and we're really excited about where we are, and we got a great challenge next week.
Hey, go enjoy it, man.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Final score 38-7. It was 14-7 late first half. Then Georgia was able to tack on a field goal 17-7 and then outscored the Yellow Jackets 21-0 in the second half. College football scoreboard is up next on ABC, and then at the bottom of the hour, Wisconsin and Minnesota for the Axe. This has been a presentation of ESPN. For Tom Luganville, Greg McElroy, our entire crew, I'm Dave Pasch. So long from Atlanta. Georgia keeps its college football playoff hopes alive. The SEC championship game is next on the docket. So long for now from Atlanta.